Hare Krishna. Today we'll be discussing the explanation of Srimad Bhagavad-Gita, Chapter 2, Text 14. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance is due course, or like the appearance and disappearance of a winter and summer seasons. They arise for sense perception, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. In the proper discharge of duty, one has to learn to tolerate non-permanent appearances and disappearances of happiness and distress. According to Vedic injunction, one has to take his bath early in the morning, even during the month January and February. It is very cold at that time, but in spite of that, a man who abides by the religious principles does not hesitate to take his bath cold showers. Similarly, a woman does not hesitate to cook in the kitchen in the months of May and June, the hottest part of the summer season. One has to execute his duty in spite of climatic inconveniences. Similarly, to fight is the religious principle of Kshatriyas, and although one has to fight with some friend or relative, one should not deviate from his prescribed duty. One has to follow the prescribed rules and regulations of religious principles in order to rise up to the platform of knowledge, because by knowledge and devotion only can one liberate himself from the clutches of Maya illusion. The two different names of addresses given to Arjuna are also significant. To address him as Kaunteya signifies his great blood relationship from his mother's side, and to address him as a Bharata signifies his greatness from his father's side. From both the sides, he is supposed to have a great heritage. A great heritage brings responsibility in a matter of proper discharge of duties. Therefore, he cannot be avoiding fighting. Text 15. Translation and explanation. O best among men, Arjuna, the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress and is steady in both is certainly eligible for a liberation. Anyone who is steady in his determination for the advanced stage of spiritual realization and can equally tolerate the onslaughts or a distress and happiness is certainly a person eligible for liberation. In the Varnasrama institution, the fourth stage of life, namely the renounced order sannyasa, is a painstaking situation, but one who is serious about making his life perfect surely adopts the sannyasa order of life in spite of all the difficulties. The difficulties usually arise from having to serve family relationships, to give up the connections and wife and children. But if anyone is able to tolerate such difficulties, surely his path to spiritual realization is complete. Similarly, in Arjuna's discharge of duties as Kshatriya, he is advised to preserve even if it is difficult to fight with his family members or similarly beloved persons. Lord Chaitanya took sannyasa at the age of 24, and his dependents, young wife and as well as old mother, had no one else to look after them. Yet for the higher cause, he took sannyasa and was steady in the discharge of higher duties. That is a way of achieving liberation from material bondage. Text 16. Explanation and translation. Those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existence there is no endurance, and of the existent there is no cessation. These seers have concluded by studying the nature of both. There is no endurance of the changing body, that the body is changing every moment by the actions and reactions of the different cells is admitted by a modern medical science, and thus growth and old age are taking place in the body. Spirit soul exists permanently, remaining the same despite all changes of the body and the mind. That is the difference between a matter and spirit. By nature, the body is ever changing and the soul is eternal. This conclusion is established by all classes of seers of the truth, both impersonalists and personalists. In the Vishnu Purana, it is stated that Vishnu and his abodes all have a illuminated spiritual existence. The words existent and the non-existence refer only to the spirit and matter, that is a version of all the seers of the truth. This is the beginning of the instruction of the Lord to the living entities who are bewildered by the influence of ignorance. Removal of ignorance involves the re-establishment of the eternal relationship between the worshipper and the worshipable, and the consequent understanding of the difference between the part and parcel living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One can understand the nature of the Supreme by through study of oneself. The difference between oneself and the Supreme Being understood as the relationship between the part and the whole. In the Vedanta Sutra as well as in Srimad Bhagavatam, the Supreme has been accepted as the origin of all emanations. Such emanations are experienced by the superior and inferior natural sequences. The living entity belongs to the superior nature, as it will be revealed in the 7th chapter. Although there is no difference between the energy and the energetic is accepted as the supreme, and the energy or the nature is accepted by the subordinate, the living entities. Therefore are always subordinate to the Supreme Lord. As in the case of the master and the servant, or the teacher and the thought, such a clear knowledge is impossible to understand under the spell of ignorance, and to drive away such ignorance, the Lord teaches Bhagavad-Gita for the enlightenment of all living entities of all nature. Text 17. Translation and explanation. Know that which pervades the entire body is indestructible. No one is able to destroy the imperishable soul. This verse more clearly explains the real nature of soul, which is spread all over the body. Anyone can understand what is spread all over the body. It is consciousness. Everyone is conscious of the pains and pleasures of the body in part as a whole. This spreading of consciousness is limited within one's own body. The pains and pleasures of one body are unknown to another. Therefore, each and everybody is the embodiment of the individual soul, and the symptom of the soul presence is perceived as individual consciousness. This soul is described as 1/10,000 part of the upper portion of the hair point in size. When the upper point of the hair is divided into the 100 parts, and again each of these parts is further divided into the 100 parts, each such part is the measurement of the dimension of the spirit soul, which is confirmed in Svetavatara Upanishad. Also similarly in Bhagavatam, same version is stated. There are innumerable particles of a spiritual atoms which are measured as 1/10,000 of the upper portion of a hair. Therefore, the individual particle of a spirit soul is a spiritual atom smaller than the material atoms, and such atoms are innumerable. This very small spiritual spark is the basic principle of the material body, and the influence of such a spiritual spark is spread all over the body as the influence of the active principles of some medicine spreads throughout the body. This current of the spirit soul is felt all over the body as a consciousness, and that is the proof of presence of the soul. Any layman can understand that the material body minus consciousness is a dead body, and this consciousness cannot be derived in the body by any means of a material administration. Therefore, consciousness is not due to any amount of a material combination, but to the spirit soul. In the Mukunda Upanishad, the measurement of the atomic spirit soul is also further explained. The soul is automatic in size and can be perceived by the perfect intelligence. The atomic soul is floating in the 5 kinds of air: prana, apana, vyana, samana, and udana. It is situated within the heart and spreads its influence all over the body of embodied living entities. When the soul is purified from the contamination of five kinds of a material air, its spiritual influence is exhibited. The Hatha Yoga system is meant for controlling the 5 kinds of air encircling the pure soul by a different kind of a sitting postures, not for any material profit, but for the liberation of a minute soul from the entanglement of the material atmosphere. So, the constitution of atomic soul is admitted in all Vedic literatures, and it is also actually felt in the particle experiences of any sane man. Only the insane man can think of this atomic soul as all pervading Vishnu Tattva. The influence of atomic soul can be spread all over the particular body. According to the Mukunda Upanishad, this atomic soul is situated in the heart of every living entity, and because the measurement of atomic soul is beyond the power of appreciation of a material scientist, some of them asserts foolishly that there is no soul. The individual atomic soul is definitely there in the heart along with the super soul, and thus all the energies of the bodily movement are emanating from this part of the body. The corpuscles which carry the oxygen from the lungs gather energy from the soul. When the soul passes away from this position, activity of the blood generating fusion ceases. Medical science accepts this importance of the red corpuscles, but it cannot ascertain that the source of the energy is the soul. Medical science, however, does admit that the heart is the seat of all energies of the body. Such atomic particles of the spirit whole are compared to the sunshine molecules. In the sunshine, there are innumerable radiant molecules. Similarly, the fragmental part of the Supreme Lord are atomic sparks of the rays of the Supreme Lord, called by the name Prabha as superior energy. Neither Vedic knowledge nor modern science denies the existence of the spirit souls in the body, and the science of the soul is explicitly described in Bhagavad-Gita by the personality Godhead himself. That concludes the text 17 of chapter 2 Srimad Bhagavad-Gita, written by Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.